The night was cold in King's Landing, but Ned Stark felt none of it. The fire roared behind him as he stared out the narrow window of the Tower of the Hand, his knuckles white from gripping the stone. Below, drunken laughter rolled from the great hall, where Robert Baratheon, King of the Seven Kingdoms, revelled in another wine-soaked feast. Ned's jaw clenched as he watched shadows of dancers flicker in torchlight. The man who had once been his brother-in-arms, his closest friend, was now nothing more than a crumbling shadow of a ruler, bloated, careless, and dangerously blind. He thought of Lyanna, of the war, of the promises they made on bloodied fields. He thought of the North, distant, proud, cold, and watching him now with silent judgment. He thought of Cersei, coiled like a viper around Robert's throne, her children born of incest, her ambitions masked behind golden smiles. And he thought of Jon Arryn, dead by poison and whispers. Ned Stark had never been a man of schemes. But the realm was bleeding, and Robert, once a storm, had become the rot. To do nothing was to watch the kingdom fall into fire and lies. The decision had taken weeks, nights of pacing, hands trembling at the thought. The last nudge had come in a letter from Stannis Baratheon, vanished to Dragonstone. A letter burned in the hearth, but forever etched in his mind. Joffrey is not the king's son. Cersei's children are born of Jaime. The crown is a lie. He had tried the honorable route. He had confronted Cersei with the truth, hoping she would flee. She did not. She smiled. "When you play the Game of Thrones, Lord Stark, you win or you die," she had said. And so he began to play. It began with wine. Ned paid a visit to Grand Maester Pycelle under the guise of concern for Robert's health. "The king's appetite for strong drink is dangerous," Ned had said. "Perhaps you might prepare something to ease his thirst, something gentler for his next hunt." Pycelle, half senile and half traitor, nodded slowly, fumbling through his vials. He handed Ned a mixture said to steady the heart. "Just a few drops," the old man said. "Dilute it. It dulls the blood." Ned passed it on to Stark-Lannister with a smile and a lie. "The king wishes to try something lighter, less burn, more strength for the hunt." When Robert rode out the next morning with spear in hand and laughter booming across the fields, Ned watched from the balcony, a silent shadow. He prayed it would be enough, that the mixture would slow Robert, make him reckless, unsteady. It was a boar, a great black beast, tusks thick as arms, and Robert, sluggish and slow, was gored through the belly after 2 thrusts missed. Lancel tried to pull him back, but it was already done. The king lay dying. His men carried him back to the castle, blood soaking the sheets, the air thick with the stench of death and wine. Ned was at his side, face blank, voice quiet. He held Robert's hand as the king gasped for breath, barely conscious. "Promise me, Ned," Robert whispered, blood bubbling at the corner of his lips. "You'll protect them." "I will," Ned said. He did not ask who. He let Robert assume. It was kinder. That night, as the kingdom wept for its king, Ned Stark became something he had never wanted to be, a man who chose the blade in the dark over the sword in the sun. He burned the wineskin. He dismissed Lancel. He ordered the boar's carcass buried. And when Pycelle asked about the king's state before the hunt, Ned lied, clear-eyed and firm. Robert's death was declared a tragedy of the wild, a king brought low by his own courage. No one questioned it. No one knew, except Varys, who watched him carefully, lips pursed, and Littlefinger, who smiled too wide. The next morning, Ned summoned the small council. "Robert's will names me protector of the realm," he said, "until his true heir comes of age." He had not yet named that heir. Stannis waited in Dragonstone. Cersei waited in the Red Keep. The game had begun. The Red Keep had never felt more suffocating. Ned Stark walked the corridors as if they were lined with blades, every glance from a Lannister guard a silent threat, every whisper in the halls a possible betrayal. Robert was barely cold in his grave, and already the power vacuum had begun to swirl with silent fury. Cersei moved fast, too fast. She had taken control of the treasury, placed her bannermen at key city positions, and replaced Robert's guards with gold-cloaked men loyal to her family. The small council, either blind or bribed, nodded to her every word. Only Renly and Barristan Selmy seemed uneasy. But unease was not resistance. Ned had sent word to Stannis 2 nights prior. A raven bearing the truth, Joffrey was no son of Robert Baratheon. He urged the rightful heir to come swiftly but with caution. The realm was fragile, and the Lannisters had teeth. He had also written to Robb in Winterfell. The words were careful, measured, but they carried the weight of urgency. The time for boyhood is over, he had written. The North must be ready. He sat now in the solar, alone, Robert's will in hand. Sealed with the royal sigil, the parchment named Ned Stark protector of the realm until the king's heir came of age. A document that, if made public, would hand him temporary authority over the kingdom. But Cersei had not allowed it to be read before the court. She had torn it from Ned's hand with soft menace cloaked in silk smiles. "You would place yourself between a mother and her son," she had said, her eyes glinting with poison. Even Robert wasn't that cruel. "I would place the truth above a lie," he had replied. He hadn't yet named Stannis, not publicly. He hesitated still, not out of fear, but calculation. He needed allies, Renly possibly. But Renly was ambitious and untrustworthy. If Stannis rode with fire and fury, the city would burn. Ned wanted a bloodless transition, or as bloodless as possible, but the window was narrowing. That night, as moonlight spread across the keep like spilled milk, Varys visited. "Lord Stark," the eunuch whispered, appearing as if conjured from shadow. "The tides are shifting. Your silence gives birth to enemies." "I've sent word to Dragonstone." Varys raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think Stannis will wait for your signal before acting? He is a hard man, and hard men seldom bend. If he marches, it will be with fire." Ned looked away. "Then I must move first." "Indeed," Varys said almost regretfully. "But be warned, the Queen knows something is amiss. The court watches, and if you are not swift, you will be silenced. Not by steel, but by whispers and paper." The next day, Ned gathered what allies he could. Petyr Baelish offered his support, slick and suspicious. "Give me gold and a name," he said, "and I'll give you the throne." "I seek no throne," Ned growled. "Only justice." Baelish smirked. "Then you're already at a disadvantage." Barristan Selmy pledged himself to the true heir, whomever Ned named. That was something, but it wasn't enough. Not against the Lannisters, who now guarded the gates, manned the armory, and walked the halls like they owned them. As he returned to his chambers, Ned found a scroll on his table. No seal, no name. He opened it. "She knows." 2 words. But they chilled him more than a blade ever could. Cersei knew, or suspected. The wine, the hunt, his quiet manipulation. She hadn't moved against him yet, but if she struck first, it would be final. She still held Sansa, still held power. That night, Ned ordered the guards doubled. He slept with his sword within reach, but sleep did not come easy. He dreamed of Robert, laughing, roaring, dying, of Lyanna whispering, "Promise me, Ned." And now those promises burned at the edges of every action he took. When dawn broke, he rose with decision. He would make the will public. He would name Stannis as heir. The truth would cut through the lies, even if it meant war. He stepped into the hallway and paused. There were no guards outside his chamber, not one. He turned slowly. The door slammed shut behind him. Steel rang out behind him, sharp, cold, and final. Ned spun, instincts sharp, hand on the hilt of ice, but it was too late. The door to his chambers had been sealed, and the click of a locking bolt echoed like a funeral bell. Outside he could hear muffled commands, curt, harsh, not in the voices of his own men, the gold cloaks. He moved fast. A hidden blade drawn, his hand pressed against the stone wall as he counted the moments. This was no arrest. This was an execution, not by trial, but by silence. They wouldn't risk a public beheading of the Lord of Winterfell. No. They'd call it suicide, or sickness, or some vague treachery whispered too softly to disprove. But Ned Stark was not ready to die. From his window, he could see the courtyard stirring, guards rushing, courtiers whispering. And there, near the stables, a golden-haired boy was being fitted for a crown. Joffrey. Already? His mouth soured. Cersei wasted no time in seating her bastard son on the Iron Throne, the bastard son of Jaime Lannister. His blood boiled. All this, Robert's death, the lies, the silence, all for that snivelling child with his cruel smile and lion's mane. Ned backed from the window and crossed to the hearth, prying at the stone he had loosened days ago. Behind it, sealed, in cloth, were 3 letters, one for Stannis, one for Robb, and one for Jon Snow. If he did not live, his words would. He shoved them into his cloak as the door burst open. Sir Meryn Trant entered, followed by 3 gold cloaks. Behind them stood Petyr Baelish, his dagger sheathed, his eyes unreadable. "Lord Stark," Sir Meryn said with forced formality, "by order of King Joffrey, you are to come with us. Do not resist." "King Joffrey," Ned repeated, low and slow. "There is no such king." Baelish stepped forward, voice soft. "Ned, don't be foolish. Walk with us. You'll have a chance to speak. But if you fight, they'll kill you." "I trusted you, Petyr." "I never asked for that," Baelish said, shrugging. "But trust me now. Walk out, live, and maybe, just maybe, we can salvage this." Ned clenched his jaw. Ice stayed on his back, heavy and cold. But his daughters were still in the Red Keep. Arya, wild and unseen. Sansa, betrothed to the monster on the throne. If he died now, they'd be defenseless. He nodded. "I'll walk." The gold cloaks relaxed, but only slightly. They flanked him tightly as they led him down the corridors of the Red Keep, where silence reigned. Servants avoided his eyes. Lords turned their faces. Only Varys stood waiting near the throne room doors, his hands folded in his sleeves, gaze full of regret. "Lord Stark," he murmured. "They move faster than even I expected. Tell me you warned Stannis." "I did, but it may be too late." The throne room loomed ahead. The Iron Throne, tall, jagged, cruel, stood occupied by a boy, too small for its steel. Joffrey lounged in it like a child playing king, while Cersei stood beside him, lips pursed in triumph. "You stand before King Joffrey Baratheon," Cersei announced as Ned was brought forth, "accused of treason against the crown." "Treason?" Ned's voice was hoarse but steady. "I serve the realm, not your lies." Cersei stepped forward. "You killed the king." Gasps echoed across the room. "You poisoned his wine," she continued, "sent him to die in the woods like a pig, and now you seek to usurp the throne." Ned's heart froze. She knew, not just the whispers, and she had evidence, or something close enough to convince the court. "I have Robert's will," Ned said, producing the parchment. "He named me protector of the realm, until Stannis, his true brother, arrives." Joffrey stood then, eyes blazing. "I am the king." "No, boy," Ned said louder now. "You are not Robert's son. You wear a crown of incest." The throne room erupted, screams, shouts, swords drawn. Cersei's voice cut through like a whip. "Seize him!" The gold cloaks turned. For a moment they hesitated, then they grabbed him. Baelish did not move. Ned's eyes met Varys's. The spider was silent. As he was dragged away, blood trickling from his mouth where a guard had struck him, he knew one thing: the war had begun. They threw him into the black cells beneath the Red Keep, damp, rank, and riddled with the cries of madmen and traitors long forgotten. The iron door clanged shut behind him, the echo ringing like the toll of a funeral bell. Ned collapsed against the stone wall, the pain in his ribs sharp, his mouth still bleeding. His wrists were bound, not with rope, but chains. Heavy, rusted, deliberate. Time passed differently in the dark. There was no sun, no moon, only the drip of water from the ceiling and the shuffle of rats. He could not tell how long he remained there. Hours, days. It was all one shadowed stretch of regret and rage. He thought often of Winterfell, of Robb and Bran, of Jon Snow standing solemn atop the wall. He thought of Arya. Gods, where was she? Had she escaped? Had they caught her? He feared for her wild heart. And Sansa. She was with the lions now, wrapped in silk and surrounded by poison. He had traded one horror for another. He had stopped Robert from being a drunken tyrant, only to see a child monster raised in his place, a puppet, a sword with no hand but his mother's. One evening, or what felt like one, the door opened with a groan. Varys slipped inside, robes whispering like secrets. "You look terrible, Lord Stark." Ned didn't rise. He didn't have the strength. You knew they would come for me." "I did," Varys said, voice calm. "But I also knew I could not stop them. You said you served the realm." "I do, and the realm needs you alive." Ned laughed, bitter and dry. "Then the realm has already lost." Varys crouched beside him, a waterskin in hand. "Drink." Ned drank greedily, and when he finished, he looked up. "What do they want?" "Cersei wants your head." "But Joffrey—" Varys sighed. "He wants a confession." "For what?" "Speaking the truth. For regicide, for treason, for being smarter than the Queen, which in her eyes is a greater crime than murder." Ned leaned his head back. "And if I confess? You live, you take the black, you disappear at the wall, your daughters remain safe." "My honor means little when your daughters are pawns on a board of lions." Ned's eyes burned. "She won't keep her word. Cersei might. Joffrey won't. But if the right words are said, the court may sway him. He is a child, and children can be led." Ned closed his eyes. The memory of Lyanna's voice returned. "Promise me, Ned." Always that whisper, like wind in the trees. "What of Stannis? He has landed at Storm's End, preparing to move on the capital. And Renly? Gathering men, planning to crown himself." Ned cursed. The Baratheon brothers would tear the realm apart, while the true enemy sat the throne. "If I die, the north rises. Yes, Robb marches south already." He jerked his head. "Robb?" He called the banners. "Your son is not a boy, Lord Stark. He is a Stark of Winterfell." A fragile, aching hope kindled in Ned's chest. Robb. That wolf blood, that fire. Maybe he would succeed where Ned had failed. Maybe the old ways still had strength. But if he confessed, he would make Robb's cause a rebellion. A war for vengeance, not justice. Yet if he remained defiant, Sansa might pay the price. Arya, too, if they found her. The choice was cruel. Either his name or his blood. He looked up at Varys. "Tell me what to say." Varys nodded once, solemnly. "They will summon you tomorrow." When he left, Ned sat in the darkness once more. But now it was different. He was not just Ned Stark, prisoner. He was a father, a wolf, a blade in the snow. He would give them what they wanted. And hope his son gave them what they deserved. The sun was blinding after so much time in darkness. Ned stood atop the steps of the great sept of Baelor, flanked by gold cloaks, hands bound in iron, legs weak from weeks of rot. Yet the crowd below was vast, restless, curious, nobles, peasants, children, all drawn to the spectacle of a fallen lord. Some jeered, some wept, some just watched, eyes wide and mouths shut. The high septon stood near the front, robes heavy with jewels. Beside him, Cersei Lannister held herself like a queen carved from gold and ice. Sansa was there too, eyes red from tears, her hands clenched. And on the throne of judgment, seated like a dragon playing with ants, was Joffrey Baratheon, the boy king, dressed in crimson and smugness, his small hands resting on the sword at his belt. Ned's gaze searched the crowd for Arya, but found no trace. Good. Maybe she had escaped. Lord Varys stepped forward, voice loud but smooth. Lord Eddard Stark, formerly Hand of the King, stands accused of treason, conspiracy, and the murder of King Robert Baratheon. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Ned felt them like cold fingers brushing his skin. Cersei stepped forward. He may yet show contrition. For the sake of peace, we offer him mercy, if he speaks the truth. She didn't say it, but everyone knew the truth she wanted. Joffrey stood then, lifting his chin. Let him speak. Ned looked to Sansa, her lips trembling, then to the sky, then finally to the boy king. He had not slept. He had not eaten. But the words were burned into his mind, Varys's voice echoing from the darkness. Do it for your daughters. Say the words. Give them their peace. So he did. I, Eddard Stark, he said, and his voice broke as he spoke, confess to the crimes of treason. The crowd gasped. Cersei's smile flickered like candlelight. Sansa nearly collapsed. I conspired to usurp the throne, he continued, eyes burning with shame. I plotted to place Stannis Baratheon upon the Iron Throne, knowing he was not the rightful heir. The lie tasted like bile. I poisoned King Robert's wine so I might rule as regent and seize control of the realm. He heard the murmurs, the curses. He could see the smugness flood into Joffrey's face. The Lannisters had won. He was no longer Ned Stark of Winterfell, not to them. He was a traitor, a coward, a liar. But his daughters would live. The High. Septon nodded gravely. And what judgment do you seek, your grace? Joffrey's eyes sparkled. Mercy. A breath rippled through the crowd, but only after he loses his head. Cersei's neck snapped toward him. No, she hissed, too late. The gold cloak seized Ned. Let him rot at the wall, she whispered frantically to Joffrey. Do not make a martyr. But the boy ignored her. Sir Ilyn, bring me his head. Sansa screamed. Varys moved to stop the boy. Cersei lunged for his arm, but the guards obeyed. Ned was forced to kneel. The stone was cold beneath him, sticky with the blood of forgotten men. He looked out at the crowd. He did not beg. He did not weep. He saw Arya, far in the back in the crowd, cloaked and still, her face pale with horror. He smiled. The last thing he saw was the sky, so blue, so clean. The sword fell. The world went silent. They called it justice, but it felt like madness. The moment Ned Stark's head fell, the entire city held its breath. And then chaos screamed to life. Sansa collapsed, wailing so loud it tore through the crowd. Arya didn't scream. She ran. Fast, sharp, ducking through bodies as blood sprayed the steps of the sept. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Yoren of the Night's Watch had grabbed her just as the sword rose and pulled her into the shadows, hand over her mouth. They'll kill you next, girl, he whispered. You got the look of a wolf, and they're hunting. Wolves now. Down below, the people didn't know what to do. Some cheered, some vomited. Others stared, frozen in place, unable to believe the hand of the king, Warden of the North, had died like a common criminal. But it was done. Joffrey smiled wide, proud, his boots still clean. Cersei stood frozen, face pale, her plan broken, apart by her son's childish cruelty. She had wanted Ned discredited, not decapitated. With his death, he became something more than a traitor. He became a symbol, a warning, a spark, and sparks ignite fire. In Winterfell, ravens arrived. Days later, Robb Stark read the words once, twice, then handed the parchment to Maester Luwin, silent and still. His hand trembled only slightly as he spoke. "Call the banners." "Are you sure, my lord?" Luwin asked, though he already knew the answer. "They killed my father," Robb said. "There's no more waiting. The North rides to war." House Manderley, Karstark, Umber and more all answered. The direwolves were loose. What had been a movement to reclaim honor became a crusade for vengeance. The North would not forget. The North would not forgive. In Dragonstone, Stannis read, "The ravens report and set it aflame." "So they murdered him," he muttered, "just as I warned." Davos Seaworth stood beside him. He tried to do what was right, and he died for it. Stannis' jaw tightened. "Then we'll do what is necessary. Light the fires. Call the lords. We march." "Against the boy?" Stannis shook his head. "Against the lie." In the Vale, Peter Baelish sipped sweet wine and watched the sky from the eyrie. His face was a picture of serene calculation. "Ned Stark is dead," he said aloud to no one. Good. He had no love for Joffrey or Cersei, but chaos. Chaos was a ladder. And now the ladder stretched high. In King's Landing, Cersei's grip on power began to crack. Her son refused her counsel. He beheaded lords for sport. He threatened the court with childish tantrums and deadly orders. Sansa became his prisoner, a broken girl in a golden cage. The realm watched with growing dread. Varys walked the halls like a ghost, gathering whispers like coins. The spider knew. Things were unraveling, and fast. And far beyond, in the cold of the wall, Jon Snow stared into the darkness. The news came with ravens and frost. "They executed him," Sam whispered. "Your father. He confessed. And they took his head." Jon turned away. No tears came. "Only fire. I'll kill them," he said under his breath. But the wall had its own threats, and Jon had sworn vows. But some vows are broken when the blood of family is spilled. Ned Stark's death did not end the game. It began it. His fall shattered alliances, fueled vengeance, and twisted the wheels of power into chaos. The North burned, the Baratheons warred, the Targaryens rose, and the Lions thought they had won. But in the shadows of broken honor and shattered peace, a storm was coming, because when the sword fell, it did not silence the truth. It only made it louder.